As we say in Telugu, Sabhaku Namaskaram. Especially I would like to thank both Thunchan Foundation as well as Sahitya Academy for inviting me today here, because it brings back a lot of memories. Of course, my first disclaimer would be that I can't speak in Malayalam, so bear with me. I'll be speaking in English, so you'll have to bear with me. And second thing is, by addressing Vasudhendra and Mumtaz, Khadija Mumtaz ji, Ramanunni, who are all instrumental, and Srinivas Rao, who are instrumental in bringing me here, I thank them. But I would like to start with saying a few words about MTG, not about Telugu fiction. I came to Tirur thrice before. This is the fourth time I'm coming here. I was invited by MT for twice for Thunchan Festival and once for an international seminar on Mahabharata. All the three times. Today I'm feeling very sad because I've never been on this stage without MT Garu sitting before me and making some comment after I finish my paper presentation. Because the first time we had a good interaction after I spoke about, because the topic I was given was geography and literature. So on that topic, when I presented a paper about the Rayalaseema geography and how it affected the literature, how it was reflected in literature, we had a very good talk on that. And that evening, I remember we were both sitting in those two first chairs. We were watching Kuchipudi dance. The next day we had Kathakali. So during the Kuchipudi performance of one Deepika Reddy from Andhra Pradesh, MT Garu was asking me what is the change in the performance that came over the years of Kuchipudi dance. So I was explaining him how it started in the 14th century, but how it evolved, how it is almost a different one. It has become very glamorous, and it has changed its performance also. And the next day he was telling me about Kathakali. So we had very good conversation, and during the Mahabharata seminar, he was not feeling well and he was lying down in his house. I went and spoke to him after the seminar was over. And during that time, he said, I heard that your paper was good. Somebody was coming and telling me, I'm sorry, I couldn't attend. Then I was just talking to him and asked him for permission to translate Randamuram into Telugu. Bhima, I had read it in English. He asked me, can you read Malayalam? I said, I'm sorry, sir, I can't read Malayalam. I'll be translating via English. He said, no. Mrinalini, I would like to give you the book. I would like it if you translate. I have faith in you, but you can't translate directly from my original. So it's my rule that this book has to be translated only from Malayalam. It cannot be translated via any other language. So he refused permission to me. That was my last conversation with MT Garu. It was 4 or 5 years back. I was here, we were sitting in the cottage and talking. So I was recalling all that when I was invited to come to Tirur, recalling all the nice times. We had good conversations about Telugu literature. And he knew a lot. He knew many of our Telugu poets. So he was asking me, how are they, what are they doing now, what's happening in Telugu. So we used to have good academic conversations often. So with this nostalgic beginning to my paper, I would like to say a few words about MT's writings. Unfortunately, we don't have many translations in Telugu of MT. I don't know why, because there are very few people who can translate directly from Malayalam into Telugu. We had to go again through English. Whatever the reasons, I have very few, I think only one or two. His famous now Naliketu was translated into Telugu, and maybe a few short stories. That's all. So Telugus are not familiar with MT's writings at all. Very few who have read the English translations know him. Others know him, of course, they know him as a director. They know him, his film career. Many of them know his film career, but not as a writer. They haven't read him much because of lack of translations. But when I read him, what I found was about his literary craft or whatever. We all know, I mean, most of you, everybody was telling you since morning, though I can't follow Malayalam so well, I know what everybody must have been saying about him. The regular things we have and the incisive, you must have, most of these scholars here must have given insights into his. But as an alien reader, somebody from outside, what I felt was I was harping mainly on the women characters because that's my favorite subject. And what I saw that the way he captured the loneliness of women, I don't think even a women writer could capture that. Woman is always among a situation. She is in the institution of family institution, but she's always alone. The way she is isolated, especially when a woman takes up, goes according to her choice. Like you have the story Vision, where she wants to sing. She is even watching M.S. Subbulakshmi when she's asked to put off the TV. Anyway, that sort of, when she makes a choice, she is isolated. So the loneliness and isolation of women is one aspect which he has brought out so well. I don't think even feminist writers could bring it to the core. The core of the situation was that woman was feeling alienated, she was feeling isolated. She's very often, even in this modern age, women is often alone. So you see that sort of writing with most of his characters. The story where the furniture is being sold, even in that story, that woman is part of the furniture. She is just another piece. That is the underlying theme. She is selling the furniture. So obviously she considers herself to be part of the furniture of her husband. So she can be disposed of whenever he feels like it. So this sort of, women are so alone. Even when you see that is not the main theme in Sherlock. In Sherlock, that is not the main theme. The other character, the male character is the main, and the cat is the main character. But the sister, she's always lonely. Her husband keeps saying, I'm coming, he never turns up. She's waiting for him, cooks for him, he doesn't turn up. So this loneliness of a woman is something within a situation where she is supposed to be holding up the family institution. She is the one holding up the family institution. She is the one holding up the family culture. But where is she? She is always alone. Nobody is with her. They expect a lot from her, but they are not with her. Even in Nalukettu, where the main story is different. But look at the mother's character. The mother is been isolated because she made a choice. So this isolation comes when you make a choice. When a woman makes a choice, the isolation steps in, because that is not acceptable. And nothing is blatant in M.T.'s writing, as everybody knows. He's I think, one of the greatest craft. He's got one of the greatest crafts in the world literature. So nothing is blatant there. So this lady, she is shunned by her own son, who is supposed to be buying that house back to give it to his mother. But he shuns her decision because she made a choice. So whenever woman makes a choice, she is shunned, she is isolated, she becomes alone. This is a repetitive motif in M.T., which I noticed, and which is so true. He doesn't actually slap in the face and say so, but he shows us through so many things. And then you have that, the way his craft is, don't have words to describe, though I have read very few of his. His craft is so good, nothing actually feels that he's saying loudly. There is nothing loud about him. There's plenty of drama in M.T. without melodrama. The way he manages that, the way he does it through layers. There is cruelty behind kindness, and kindness behind cruelty. Kindness behind cruelty, you all know, Nalukettu, the guy who kills his father. You can see that. And in Shilalikhitam, you have cruelty, it's supposed to be kindness. A village is supposed to be guileless. Village is supposed to be kind to its people. Village is supposed to be very healthy. It's supposed to have a healthy relationships. And what happens in that story? A girl is dead, is dying for 18-20 hours. Nobody even gives her a morsel. Nobody bothers to take her to a doctor. And supposed to be a village where everybody is related to the other person. Everybody is supposed to take care of the other person. That's what we expect of a village. So this, and underneath this kindness, there is so much cruelty. Here, these are the things that make M.T. an extraordinary writer. He was seeing something others were not seeing. He was looking at people, he was looking at institutions, he was looking at the developments in the institutions with a different eye. His look was different, his engagement with the characters was different. None of it was what you call, direct. Nothing is direct with M.T. because he believes in layers. He gives us the whole story. only Sherlock, even if we take his most famous short story, Sherlock, how many ways can we interpret it? We can say the hero, the protagonist and the cat are the same. They are both bound, they are together, they are always at home, they can't go out because they are pets. Cat is a pet. Pet stays in the home, it can't go out. Without the permission or without the owner taking it out, it can't go out. So an immigrant who lives in America has to go by the rules, and he is just a pet of the country. Another interpretation, of course, many people gave it, the cat itself is a spy. Uncle Sam is looking at you. Whatever the person is doing, the cat keeps going there and seeing. See, only one story can give you 4 or 5 meanings. This sort of writing, was it evident? Could it be seen in other languages? The sort of writing that MT did, his sort of understanding human nature so well, looking at it from a different eye than all the other his scholars or critics or his own contemporary writers. His way of looking at things was so different that he caught the essence of the institution, he caught the essence of the human nature and the human condition. His engagement with human condition, the changing human condition, is something that is unparalleled. I don't think MT can be imitated by anybody else, because it's only his eye that can look at it like that. It's only his eye that can give so many interpretations to a single scene, a single incident. So that sort of writing, probably everybody who is talking about Malayalam literature is saying, once he came onto the scene, he shied away from that social realism or Marxism, which was pervasive at that point of time, not only in Malayalam, in all Indian languages. He brought out literature from that particular shackle, because I think it was not needed in present Malayalam society. That was not the need of the hour. So he changed it. This happened in more or less all the other languages too. But did they happen the same way as in Malayalam? I'm not too sure. Some of them happened even before MT came onto the scene. I can tell you about Telugu. MT's first published story was in 1948. But before, in 1946 itself, we have the first psychological novel in Telugu by Gopi Chand. So, when you talk about human psychology, it wasn't as if MT started it. Though I repeat once again that MT's way of looking into people or situations was totally different, because he loved humans simply. Because of his love for the people, he could not hate anybody. It was that inherent kindness in him which made him look at everything from a different point of view, different vision. That's the reason he is apart from most of the writers I've read during that period of any language for that matter. So, but psychological, when I say psychological novel, I would definitely say that Telugu had a psychological novel much before MT. Gopi Chand had written it. Just now, I think this morning, Professor Madhavan was mentioning it. Buchbabu's Chivaraku Migiledi. That was another novel which came before MT wrote that. It was in 51. 1946, 51, 52, we have Ravi Shastri, his novel, Alpajeevi. All these were talking, they were all very much aware of Marxism. They all favored Marxism. They were all into social realism. But then there came a situation when they decided that my work, my novel or my short story should not confine itself to talking about this social realism or what we call communistic, we call in Telugu, Samajika Vastavikata, and not only Samyavada Vastavikata. It's not only confined to that. That was what was happening in Telugu. And another major shift because of this was that poetry was now slowly taking a backseat, prose entered. That was the age, 1950s was the age. Till then poetry was ruling. As a genre, poetry was ruling nearly all over India. But 1950s, you see the emergence of novel and short story and taking over, dominating the literary scene entirely. Once you have a novel and short story, which have to be argumentative, they need to have a base. The writer has to think a lot to write a short story. Maybe he can write a poem with a lot of, because when he feels emotional. His emotion is enough for him to write a poem, probably. But for a novel and short story, that's not enough. There are a lot, 100 things you have to do before you write a novel or a short story. That sort of thinking, that sort of bringing out an argument and substantiating your argument and bringing out all the conflicts behind the argument, this is what a novel needed. And that is the age when I think Telugu also had its golden years, 1950s, same age in Malayalam as you people were saying, while maybe MT ushered it in. Then I would say in Telugu, Gopichand ushered it in one way. Gopichand brought it out. Though Gopichand was not entirely writing about this, but I can see parallels in Gopichand, Palagommi Padmaraju, Butchi Babu. I can see the parallels to MT, where they started writing about the condition of women. Because all of them were very, very partial to women. They were discussing women like nobody else did before that, except with the exception of Chalam, who wrote in 1920s. Chalam is a different story. If I go to Chalam, I won't come out of it, so I won't mention him. He wrote in 1920s itself. In the whole of Indian literature, nobody was writing about women's sexuality in 1923-24, except Chalam in Telugu. He was the only one who was writing about women's sexuality. Anyway, from 1950s, I see that in Telugu, the radical change was that while most of the writers were communists or even members of that Progressive Writers Association, still they decided that, of course, society is the villain, institutions are the villain, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's feudalism, whether it is capitalism, they are the villains. But what is the individual doing? What is the role of the individual? So why don't we stress on that now? We've been talking about society in general, how individual is always a victim. Okay, individual is a victim, but what is his role? What should he do not to be a victim? Just blame on the society, say that feudalist, the zamindar did it, or the landowner did it, and keep quiet? What is his role? He has to fight within himself. That's exactly what MT did. What that very famous Nalu describes. Fighting within yourself, waging your own war. That is common in 1950s in Telugu fiction too. But here, I think in Telugu fiction, I'll be very brief, I'll conclude in 10 minutes. Because by 1957, we had, first time in Telugu literature, we had the new women. This is where I see a parallel with MT and a writer who would not have read MT at all by that time. Her name was Dr. Sridevi. She wrote a novel, Kalatita Viktulu. Again, what I was talking about, women having a choice. A woman has a choice of living the way she wants to. And obviously, it is not condoned, it's immediately criticized, and she is immediately declared a bad woman. The way they did it in that, I think that story's name, I hope I'm correct, Shilalikitam. That girl is declared a sinner. So everybody sits and chats while that girl is dying. So that sort of a mentality you can see in Kalatita Viktulu, people really shun her. They think no respectable girl should talk to this girl because she is living on her own terms. She is the type of new woman in Telugu fiction, like you have Nora in Doll's House in 19th century. Ibsen's Nora was considered the new woman in European literature. Similarly, Indira in Kalatita Viktulu is ushered in the new women in Telugu literature. From then you can see that writers, not only characters, many writers are women. From 1960s, we gave a plethora of women writing. Women writers increased a lot. The moment women writers increased, obviously the subject changed, the craft changed. I'm not saying that the craft was very, very good. I'm not saying that. Craft may not be good. But the main focus would be on who is telling the story. When a woman is telling the story in a family, how does she write it and how does a man write it when he's talking about a family? That difference we could see. That decides the craft. Who is telling the story? The narrator. Who is the narrator? Who is the writer and who is the narrator? We all know that there's a difference between the writer and the narrator. Anyway, both these things take predominance and then we can understand who is telling the story. So once women started writing, naturally the subject changed, the contents changed, the craft changed. But at the same time, we have the way the craft was given a lot of importance by 2-3 men, and somebody was mentioning this morning about James Joyce. James Joyce, I think he affected Indian literature at the same time in all languages. He influenced a lot of writers. We had Chandidas, we had Ravi Shastri, we had Naveen. all of them writing stream of consciousness, whether it suited the subject or not. Some people started copying James Joyce, which were bad replicas. But Vaddara Chandidas, the one person, this sort of a novel, I am not sure how many have it in their languages. He writes about the aesthetics of sexuality. Man-woman relationship, the aesthetics of it is what he writes in his Himajwala. That is one novel which was a trendsetter. People liked the novel a lot. And from whose point of view? The writer was a male, but he was writing from the point of view of the women, female protagonist. The female protagonist, Geeta Devi, is the heroine, and she talks about not just her sexuality, she is talking about what is aesthetics in a man-woman physical relationship. This is a subject nobody touched in Telugu since then up to now. Maybe Revati Devi in one poem, Jayaprabha in one poem, they have touched it, but in general nobody touched that subject. So these experimenting with the craft, experimenting with the theme started then. But in Telugu, I would like to say that the social realism or Marxist realism, these ideologies never left the Telugu fiction. They were always present. The other type of writers I'm talking about are more or less, I would say, just about an aberration. They would be just about 5 or 10, 6. The rest were writing mostly based on the communist ideology. They were sticking to that. That's what they wrote. Then the next phase was like in everywhere in India. Now you have, till then men were writing about women, Brahmins were writing about Dalits. Till 1975. From 1975 onwards, you see that now the victims are writing about themselves. They are no longer listening to what a Brahmin has got to say about whatever the progressive Brahmin he is. As I said, all these writers were mostly progressive writers. Obviously, they didn't condone our Chaturvarna Vyavastha, so obviously they were critical of it. And they were writing on behalf of the Dalits. And men were writing on behalf of the women. That is different because now the narrator has changed. The writer has changed, the narrator has changed. Now the victim becomes the narrator, the victim becomes the writer. Then there is a whole change in the scene. In fact, Dalits went to such an extent that they said, other caste writers should not write about us. We will not accept any poem, any short story, any novel by the upper caste. It could be in sympathy with us, nothing doing. We don't want them to write. They don't know us. So in Telugu it was very strong, that movement was very strong. They refused to accept anybody writing on their behalf. Women were not that rigid. They said men can write about that, but women were looking at them very insistently and then telling them this is not how you write. And because of more women writers coming up and writing about themselves, we all know that feminist movement, Dalit movement, and Muslim religious movement, minority movement, that also produced a lot of new works, excellent new life, a life which we did not know till then, which was never portrayed in Telugu literature. So these were coming, they were experiential literature. So the focus from objective looking at the society and writing has totally shifted to experiential subjective writing. So now it was all from the past 75 to this day, till 2020 I would say, we have experiential literature. Everybody writing from their own experience. And not necessarily, I don't mean just autobiographical. Experiential could also be called autobiographical. It is not just autobiographical because they are talking on behalf of, not themselves, on behalf of their own community. They are talking about thousands and lakhs of people from their point of view. These writers are talking. So this is a trend which hasn't stopped even now. Still we have the same trend going on. It is going on. Now only even among Dalits again, we have some sort of a demarcation again. In Dalits you have a Mala, you have a Madiga. In fact, that is something happening in Telangana right now actually. So Mala can't write about Madiga and Madiga can't write about Mala. They have to write subsects among the Dalits. There again, they'll object if somebody writes. They say that unless you know the life, you can't write. Like MT told me, unless you know Malayalam, you can't translate my book. These people were saying, unless you know my life, you can't write about it. Out of observation, you're writing about me, I don't accept it. So this actually divided not only the writers, it divided the readers too. It's been happening. I don't know how many other literatures are facing this problem. but it has divided the readers. Once you say that human condition as a empty, one Gopi Chand, one Buchibabu, or one Palagumi Padmaraju, and another extraordinary writer in Telugu, these people are envisaging where you are talking about a common human condition, because after all, man is man, ultimately. A human being is a human being with the same emotions. But now, when it's not accepted that you and I are not the same human beings, you are a different human being, I am a different human being, you can't write about me, I won't read you. People don't read. Not only now, don't write. People don't read. So that sort of situation, I don't know whether it's happening other places. It's interesting. It's extremely interesting, but at the same time, it's also worrying. So what brought all of them together on one platform? This is my last point. What brought all these divisions? So many subversive things in the literature itself, from the writers, among the themes, among the crafts, everything. What has brought them together is globalization. We have to thank globalization for this, because globalization has brought all these sects together, because that is the common enemy. Like once upon a time, you had this feudal, or you had a capitalist, which it's a common enemy for you to fight, or the British, obviously, quite obviously the British, you had a common enemy. Now we have a common enemy. The common enemy is globalization. So globalization is the in thing. That is the topic today for Telugu fiction. Any caste, any sect, any type of ideology, they all come and meet at globalization because they are all unhappy with the trends, which what is emanating from globalization, where man has become just a robot. Man has no individuality, cultures have no individuality, all cultures are the same, all food habits are the same, all dressing is the same, everything is the same now. Globalization has brought everybody, made everybody into just dummies. So this is one point where all the writers are meeting at present, which is a good change if you ask me. But we also needed that fragmentation. What I mean to say is, when these types of novels and short stories were coming, they were needed at that point of time because we needed to understand them. Otherwise we wouldn't know. We would look at it from our reformist point of view and talk about them. But the victim is different from the reformer. Reformer has his own ideology. He goes by that. But for the victim, that may not be the answer. That is not what he wants to say. So when victims start talking, definitely there is a different tone, different craft, a different way of telling the story. So that brought about a lot of variety, and I can reel off a lot of names, which I'm not going to do because they won't make any sense to you anyway. So I think ultimately what is now happening here is that literary craft as such has not been discussed in Telugu as the content has been discussed. Many people don't understand that there is no craft without content. No, how do you get it through the content? How do you get through what the writer is saying unless through the craft? So, because of the Marxist ideology or whatever that permeates all critics in Telugu, we have mostly Marxist critics only even now, they don't bother about the literary craft. They bother only about the themes, subjects, the endings that are given to that story, whether the ending is progressive or not. But now at least, at last, I think they have also toned down, started understanding that craft is not something separate from the content, separate from the plot, separate from the idea. It's through craft that we reach the writer. It's through craft that the writer reaches us. So this simple thought is now actually, with some critics, including me, try to keep telling each and every person I meet, each and every writer I meet, each and every time I write an article, if we try to tell that. So we are at this stage when all fragmented voices, subversive voices, everything has come now, and they are all now focusing on this particular aspect, which has united more or less, in spite of small differences. They have united the Telugu fiction writers, and that is the present trend that is going on. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm sorry if I've taken up more time than I was allotted.
Thank you, Madam. Madam was talking about MT's female characters. I felt that she understood the female characters better than the critics in Malayalam. So, thank you, Madam, very much. And she was talking about the people who are experiencing, it is more important, that is Dalits starting to write, female women starting to write. It is different. from Brahmins writing about Dalits and all. It's correct. And the other one is globalization. She was talking about globalization also. And craft is not different from content. Okay. She was talking about the people who are experiencing starts to write.